For 15 years, the grizzly pine wilderness kept her secret. Luna was a ghost, a scentless whisper, a memory of a girl who died with her pack. She survived on roots, radium, and the ironclad rule never be seen, never make a sound, never ever shift. But on the anniversary of the Red Night, the grief was a physical claw, and when her foot snapped into the cold, silver-toothed poacher's trap, the rule didn't just break, it shattered. The scream that ripped from her throat was not human. It was a lament, a war cry, a lifetime of pain. And miles away the Alpha King heard it. The cold bit, as it always did. It was a sharp, invasive cold, the kind that sinks past the skin and settles deep in the bone. Luna ignored it. She had been ignoring it for 15 years, and it had yet to kill her. Her world was a 50-square-mile patch of the grizzly pine wilderness. Her home was a hollowed-out, ancient redwood, its entrance concealed by a curtain of heavy ivy and a fallen log. Her food was snared, rabbits, foraged berries, and the occasional fish she caught with a line and a hook she'd stolen from an abandoned campsite a decade ago. Her knife, a worn Kershaw she'd found in that same campsite, was her only real companion. She was sharpening it on a flat river stone when the memory hit her. It wasn't a gentle memory. It was a storm. 15 years ago today. The smell of pine and wood smoke was suddenly replaced by the coppery tang of blood and the acrid stench of burning fur. She was 10 years old again, small hands pressed over her mouth, hidden in the kitchen pantry, while screams echoed outside. The emblem, a snarling wolf's head, split by a single iron fang, was burned into her mind. The iron fang scourge. They'd left no one. Not her father, the pack's beta. Not her mother. Not her little brother, Jonah. She alone had survived burying her scent beneath the compost heap, praying to a moon goddess she was no longer sure she believed in. When she'd finally emerged days later, there was nothing left but ash and silence. So she ran. She ran until her legs gave out deep into the state-protected wilderness where no pack territories were drawn. And she stayed. At 25, Luna was not a person. She was a creature. She was lean, fast, and silent. She hadn't spoken a word aloud in so long she wasn't sure her vocal cords still worked. She had never not once let her wolf out. To shift was to release a blast of scent, a beacon to any alpha that a rogue was in their territory. To be found was to be dragged before a council, questioned, and most likely executed. So Luna the human survived, and Luna the wolf slept, trapped in a cage of trauma. The anniversary always made her careless. The grief was a thick fog, dulling the sharp edges of her survival instincts. She was checking a snare line near the northern ridge, her mind full of ash and ghosts, when she put her foot down wrong. There was a metallic thwack, a sound that didn't belong. She looked down. A bear trap, new and oiled its steel teeth, serrated. But it wasn't the steel that made her blood freeze. It was the smell. Silver. Poachers. But not for bears. For her. For her kind. The pain was secondary. First came the white-hot, blinding panic. Silver. It wasn't just holding her. It was burning her, searing its way into her skin, poisoning her blood. She ripped at the trap with her bare hands, the metal edges slicing her palms. She bit back a whimper. Never make a sound. But the silver, it was different. It wasn't just pain, it was a violation. It was unmaking her. The memories of her family, the years of solitude, the biting cold and the searing burn of the silver all coalesced. The cage inside her chest didn't just rattle, it exploded. A sound ripped from her throat. It was not a scream. It was not a howl. It was both a sound of profound, agonizing loss that had been held in for 15 years. It was the cry of a soul that had been silent for too long, a desperate feral lament that shot through the trees over the ridge and into the dying light of the day. 5 miles south, Alpha King Maddox Kyle held up a hand. His patrol, 5 of his most trusted warriors from the Crimson Peak Conclave, stopped instantly. Their feet bare on the forest floor in their shifted forms, made no sound. "Corbin," Maddox said, his voice a low rumble. His beta, a massive grey wolf, shifted. Corbin had been his friend long before he was his king. He rose to his full 6'4" height, rubbing the back of his neck. "What is it, Mad?" "Did you hear that?" Corbin frowned, tasting the air. "The wind may be a mountain lion." "No." Maddox shook his head, his black hair falling into his eyes. He pushed it back. His senses were sharper than any in his pack, a burden of the king's bloodline. That was not an animal. He was in the grizzly pine wilderness for a reason. For the last 6 months, reports of poachers using silver-laced traps had crossed his desk. It was an old barbaric practice, outlawed by every treaty, human and shifter alike. He was here to hunt the hunters. But this sound, it had struck a chord deep inside him. It wasn't just a cry of pain, it was a cry of despair. And beneath that, so faint, he almost missed it, was a single, perfect note that resonated with his very soul. "Maddox, we have a route to keep," Corbin pressed, pulling on his jacket. "We need to find this poacher's camp before nightfall." "Change of plans," Maddox said. He pulled his own black shirt over his head, his muscles flexing. He was the king, but he was a warrior first. "You and the others find the camp. Set the charges. Do not engage until I get there. I'm going to find the source of that sound." "Alone," Corbin protested. "In territory crawling with silver, that's reckless. It's an order beta." Maddox's voice dropped into the register that permitted no argument. His eyes, normally a warm hazel, flashed with the gold of his alpha. Corbin bowed his head stiffly. "Yes, Alpha." Maddox didn't wait. He turned and ran not as a man, but as a force. He moved through the trees with supernatural speed, leaping over fallen logs and crossing creeks in a single bound. The forest was his, and something in it was dying. The scent hit him a mile out. Blood. Old grief. And nothing. It was the nothing that stopped him. He could smell the blood copper and sharp. He could smell the faintest trace of silver which made his gums itch. But the wolf, the person who was bleeding, their scent was masked. It was like trying to see a color that didn't exist. He'd only ever heard of one bloodline with that ability, a pack of silent wolves who could mask their presence from other shifters, a pack that was by all accounts extinct, wiped out 15 years ago in a rogue attack, the Red Night Massacre. He pushed faster, breaking through a tangle of ferns into a small clearing, and saw her. She was more animal than human. Dressed in stiff, patched-up canvas and crude rabbit-skin wrappings, she was crouched over her own leg, which was swallowed by a massive silver-toothed trap. Her hair was a matted, tangled mess of brown and leaves. Her hands were raw, her knuckles bloody from trying to free herself. She was staring at her leg, snarling a low, guttural sound coming from her chest. Then she must have sensed him. Her head snapped up. Maddox's world stopped. It wasn't her feral appearance that stunned him. It was her eyes. They were the color of the forest floor, green and gold and wild, and they were filled with a terrifying, absolute hatred. And his wolf, the ancient, powerful beast that lived inside him, that ruled all other wolves, rose to the surface and spoke a single devastating word. Mate. The word echoed in his skull. Mate. Maddox took a step forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. I'm not going to hurt you. The girl reacted instantly. With a snarl that would have sent any of his pack warriors recoiling, she ripped her Kershaw knife from a sheath on her belt. She held it with the practiced ease of someone who had used it for everything, including killing. Stay back, she hissed. The voice was a revelation. It was rough like gravel and dry leaves cracked from 15 years of disuse, but it was a human voice. The silver. Maddox said, his gaze fixed on her leg. The flesh around the trap's teeth was blackening. It's poisoning you. I need to get you out. I'll get myself out. She spat and jammed the tip of her knife into the trap's spring mechanism. It was a futile gesture. The spring was too strong, and her hands were already slick with her own blood. Maddox felt her pain as a physical ache in his own chest. The mate bond, even unacknowledged, was a bridge. He could feel her panic, her rage, and the terrifying, crushing weight of her loneliness. It was a chasm of darkness that went on and on. You can't, he said, his voice gentle but firm. That's a B8 heavy-duty spring. You need over 200 pounds of pressure to release it. Let me help. My name is Maddox. She paused, her eyes narrowing. Maddox, she repeated, tasting the name. An alpha. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. You all smell the same. Power and blood. I'm here to hunt the men who set that trap, he said, taking another slow step. He was 3 yards away now. The silver is for us, for our kind. There is no us, she whispered, the hatred faltering for just a second, replaced by a wave of pure agony. There is only me, and you will not take me. Take you where? He asked, genuinely confused. To your cells, to your alphas, to your councils. She was rambling, her eyes losing focus as the silver poisoning advanced. I'm not a rogue, I'm not. I'm a ghost. The pain in her leg must have become too much. Her arm wavered. Maddox moved. It wasn't a human speed. In one blink, he crossed the distance between them. She reacted on pure instinct, slashing with the knife. He didn't try to block it. He let the blade slice across his forearm, a clean cut that welloped red. She froze, stunned by his lack of defense. Blood for blood, he said, his voice low. He didn't look at his own wound. He gripped the trap, one hand on each side of the steel jaws. This will hurt. He didn't try to pry the jaws open. He simply pulled. The sound of groaning metal filled the clearing as he tore the tempered steel apart in his hands. He ripped the entire mechanism from its mooring, his muscles straining, the veins in his neck standing out. With a final explosive grunt, he snapped the central pin. Luna collapsed, her leg free. She scrambled backward, dragging herself through the dirt, her hand still holding the knife. What are you? I am the Alpha King, Maddox said, as if it were an apology. He tossed the broken pieces of the trap aside. His own arm was already healing, the skin stitching itself back together. She stared at the healing wound, then at the mangled steel. Her eyes were wide with terror. King! The Alpha King. The one who ruled the conclaves. The one whose laws she had been hiding from. She had just screamed, shifted partially, and been found. By the one wolf on the continent, she could not escape. No, she whispered, shaking her head. No, no, no. She pressed herself against the base of a pine tree, raising the knife again. But it was a pathetic defense. She was trembling, not from cold, but from shock. Maddox knelt, keeping his distance. You're safe. I swear on my blood you are safe. Safe? She laughed, a dry, terrible sound. The last alpha who told me I was safe was named Patron. He was my father's beta, and he was the one who opened the gates for the Iron Fangs. The name hit Maddox like a physical blow. "Patron! He wore the iron fang on a ring," she said, her voice dropping. "He watched my mother die." And then he smiled. Maddox's blood ran cold. Patron was not some long-dead beta. Patron was a member of his council, a trusted advisor, an elder who had served his father. He was known for his hawkish views, but he was loyal. Wasn't he? "The girl, the pack. You are from the Silver Creek pack." Maddox said, the pieces clicking into place. She flinched at the name. "I am from nowhere. I am no one." "You are my mate," he said the words, slipping out raw and necessary. Luna's expression didn't change to one of shock or joy, as he might have expected. It hardened into something that looked terrifyingly like pity. "You poor fool," she whispered. "You think that word means something to me. You think that changes anything. I am a corpse that learned how to walk, and I will not be your queen." She saw his stunned silence as her opportunity. She threw the Kershaw knife not at his chest, but at his face. He snatched it out of the air, his reflexes absurdly fast, the pommel of the knife striking his palm. In that second of distraction, she was gone. She didn't run. She vanished. She used the trees, the undergrowth, the shadows moving with an unearthly silence. Even with his alpha senses, he could barely track her. She was a flicker, a ghost, and she was running straight for the poachers' camp. "Corbin!" Maddox roared, his voice, amplified by his power, a sound that shook the trees. "All units converge. She's running toward the poachers. She's running blind." He didn't wait. He shifted. Man-sized, he was powerful. As a wolf, he was a god of the forest. His form was massive, black as a moonless night, his eyes burning with golden light. He was the Alpha King, and he would not lose his mate, not to poachers, and not to her own past. He burst through the undergrowth, the scent of her blood, and the agonizing, masked scent of her pulling him forward. He could hear the poachers now, men's voices rough and low, and the click of a rifle bolt. They'd heard her. Luna ran on pure, unadulterated terror. Her leg was a rod of fire. The silver-laced poison was a sluggish, burning sludge in her veins, making her dizzy. In her head, she wasn't 25. She was 10, running from the burning ruins of her home, the smell of ash in her lungs. Alpha, king, mate. The words were a nonsensical jumble. He was a trick, a trap, a beautiful, powerful lie designed to drag her back into the world that had destroyed her. She burst through a line of saplings and stumbled into a clearing. It was the wrong clearing. The smell of cheap beer, unwashed bodies, and gun oil hit her. 3 men dressed in mismatched camouflage were gathered around a small, smoky fire. A dozen silver-plated traps were piled nearby. Cages filled with whimpering wolves, not shifters but true forest wolves, were stacked like cargo. Poachers. The 3 men spun around, raising their rifles. Well, hell, one of them, a man with a greasy beard and a John Deere cap, spat. "Look what we got here. A little lost sweetheart." Luna's eyes darted left and right. No escape. The clearing was a dead end boxed in by a sheer rock face. She was trapped. Again. "What's wrong with her leg?" another man, younger and wiry, asked, stepping closer. The bearded man saw the blood, the mangled flesh. His eyes lit up with a sick, greedy understanding. "That ain't no bear trap wound. That's silver." He looked at her, his smile widening, showing yellow teeth. "You're one of them, ain't you, Ed Dog? What's the word? A lichen." Luna raised her knife, but her arm was heavy, her vision tunneling. The silver was working fast. "These poachers are human," a voice said, clear and cold from the trees behind her. Luna spun, stumbling. Maddox was there in his human form, his jacket gone, his shirt stained with his own drying blood. He was standing at the edge of the clearing, flanked by 5 of the largest men she had ever seen. They didn't look like men. They looked like predators poured into human skin. "King Maddox," the bearded man said, and there was real fear in his voice. He hadn't expected the Alpha King. He'd expected a rogue, a straggler. "You are hunting on Conclave land." Maddox said, his voice quiet, but it carried across the clearing. "You are using forbidden tools. You are trapping protected animals." He nodded to the caged wolves. "And you have harmed what is mine." His eyes flicked to Luna. The possessiveness in that look was so profound, so absolute, it made her skin prickle more than the silver. The poacher, realizing he was cornered, made a desperate, stupid choice. He grabbed Luna, pulling her back against his chest, and pressed the muzzle of his rifle to her temple. "Not another step, King!" He snarled, his beer breath washing over her, "or your little dog gets a silver bullet right through the brain." Luna didn't flinch. She just felt tired. Of course, this was her life, from one trap to another. Maddox looked at the man. He didn't look at Luna. He just looked at the man holding her. He didn't speak. He just pushed. It was a power Luna had never felt. It wasn't physical. It was a wave of pure, undiluted will. It was the authority of 1,000 generations of alphas focused into a single point. The man's hand began to shake. His breath hitched. His eyes, wide with terror, met Maddox's. "You," Maddox said, "are going to let her go." I. The man was sweating, his finger trembling on the trigger. "You will put the gun down. I can't." "You can, and you will." "Because if you don't," Maddox said, taking a step forward, "your mind will break before the bullet ever leaves the chamber. I am your king, human, and you will obey." The poacher's face crumpled. A small animal sound of terror escaped his lips. He shoved Luna forward, letting her fall to the ground, and dropped the rifle as if it were on fire. He fell to his knees, his hands over his head, sobbing. Luna landed hard on her injured leg. The pain was so white-hot, so absolute, that the world finally went dark. The last thing she saw before she passed out was Maddox's face as he knelt over her. His expression, not of triumph, but of pure, unadulterated panic. "Lenora!" he roared. "I need a healer now." Waking up was a slow, agonizing process. First came the warmth. Luna hadn't been truly warm in 15 years. Her sleeping burrow was always damp, her salvaged blankets thin. This was a deep, penetrating warmth, as if she were wrapped in summer itself. Second came the smell, not of dirt or blood or fear, but of sage lavender and something rich like roasted meat. Third came the pain. It was still there, a dull, throbbing echo in her leg, but the searing, acidic burn of the silver was gone. Luna's eyes snapped open. She was not in the forest. She was in a room. A real room. The walls were made of thick, dark wood logs, the ceiling high and beamed. She was lying on a bed, a soft, yielding mattress, covered by what felt like a cloud. She touched it. A Pendleton wool blanket, the tag still on it. A low fire crackled in a massive stone fireplace across the room. "Ah, you're awake. Good." The king was becoming agitated. Luna tensed her hand, flying to her belt for the Kershaw knife. It wasn't there. She shot up, ignoring the bolt of pain from her leg, and pressed herself against the headboard, her eyes wide. An older woman sat in a rocking chair by the fire. She had a kind, wrinkled face, and hair the color of steel, pulled back in a neat bun. She was knitting. She didn't look threatening, but Luna knew better. No one was safe. "Where am I?" Luna demanded, her voice still a rasp. "You are at the King's private lodge, in the heart of the Crimson Peak Conclave." The woman said, her knitting needles clack-clacking in a steady rhythm. "My name is Lenora. I am the pack healer. And you, child, were very, very lucky. Lenora gestured to Luna's leg. Luna looked down. Her crude canvas pants had been cut away. Her leg was clean. The wound, which should have been a blackened, suppurating mess, was a clean, healing cut. A poultice of dark green herbs was spread over it, and it was wrapped in pristine white bandages. "I drew the silver poison out," Lenora said. "It took hours. It had gone all the way to your hip. You've been asleep for 2 days." 2 days. Luna's stomach clenched. 2 days of vulnerability. 2 days of being kept. Maddox the king has not left this lodge. He's been hunting, pacing the perimeter. He wanted to be here when you woke, but I banished him. A sleeping patient doesn't need a 300-pound wolf growling at every shadow. Lenora smiled, a small, knowing smile. "He called me his mate." Luna whispered the word, tasting like ash. "That's because you are," Lenora said simply, as if discussing the weather. "The moon goddess hasn't been blind, child, just patient." "The moon goddess is dead," Luna said flatly. "She died with my family." Lenora's needles stopped clicking. She set her knitting down and looked at Luna, her eyes sharp and assessing. "She did not. She was with you in that hollow tree. She was with you when you found that knife. And she was with the king when she guided him to your cry. You are a silent wolf, are you not?" Luna flinched. "How did you know? Your scent. It's muffled, like it's wrapped in cotton. I've only ever read about it. The bloodline of the Silver Creek pack. It was thought to be gone." "It is gone," Luna said. "No," Lenora said, her voice softening. "It is here, sitting in the king's bed wearing the king's t-shirt." Luna looked down. She was wearing a long black cotton t-shirt. It smelled of pine and ozone and him. Maddox. She ripped at the blankets, disgusted, ready to tear the shirt off. "I wouldn't do that," Lenora advised. "There are 2 guards, his betas, posted outside that door, and the king himself is on the porch. They will all be in here before you can take a breath, and none of them will be clothed. It will be very awkward." Luna froze. She was a prisoner, a well-treated, well-fed prisoner in a wool blanket, but a prisoner nonetheless. "He won't hurt you," Lenora said. "But he will not let you go. Not now that he's found you. He's an alpha," Luna spat. "They take, they conquer, they destroy." "He is the king," Lenora corrected gently. "His father, the old king, he was hard. He ruled by fear. Maddox is different. He is ruling by trying to clean up his father's mess. He is trying to unite the packs, to bring justice to the rogues, to end the very poachers who caught you." Just then, the front door of the lodge opened and slammed shut. Heavy boots stomped on the wooden floor. "She's awake." It wasn't a question. Maddox's voice was a deep baritone that vibrated through the walls. "She is," Lenora called out, "and she is frightened and fragile. Be gentle, Maddox." "I'm not fragile," Luna snarled just as the bedroom door opened. Maddox stood in the doorway. He filled it. He was clean-dressed in jeans and a grey Henley, but he looked as wild as she felt. His hair was damp, his jaw dark with stubble, and his hazel gold eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that was terrifying. It was a look of pure primal hunger. Not for food, but for her. "Luna," he said. Her name. He'd never heard her name. "How do you know my name? You spoke in your sleep. You cried for your brother. Jonah." Her heart seized. It was a betrayal. Even her unconscious mind was a traitor. Maddox looked at Lenora. "Leave us." "Alpha," Lenora said, nodding. She gathered her knitting, and with one last sympathetic look at Luna, left the room, closing the door softly behind her. They were alone. The silence was deafening, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Maddox didn't move from the doorway. He just watched her. He seemed to be drinking her in. "Why?" Luna finally whispered, her throat tight. "Why save me? Why not just let me die in the woods?" "I couldn't," he said, his voice raw. You're the other half. Don't you feel it?" "I feel nothing." She lied. "I feel trapped. I feel like a rabbit in a new snare." "I know," he said, and the pain in his voice was real. "I know you're scared. I can smell it. But I also—" He took a step into the room. "I also heard what you said. About Patron." Luna tensed. "He's a murderer. He's a traitor. He is one of the most respected elders in my conclave," Maddox said, his face hardening. "He has advised me since I took the throne. He was my father's most loyal soldier. He killed my family." Luna enunciated every word, her voice shaking with a rage so profound it made her see red. "He opened the gates. I saw him. He smiled while my mother burned." Maddox's jaw clenched. This was the conflict. His mate, a woman he was biologically programmed to protect and believe, and his most trusted advisor. "I need to be sure," he said. "Sure," Luna laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "You need proof. My word isn't enough. The word of your mate." She spat the word. "I'll give you proof." With a surge of adrenaline, she threw off the blankets. She ignored the screaming protest from her leg and launched herself not at Maddox but at the window. She had no plan. She would break the glass. She would run. She would die in the snow. It was better than this. Better than being the plaything of an alpha who didn't believe her. She never made it. He was on her in an instant, his arms hard as steel wrapping around her waist. He didn't grab her. He corralled her, pulling her back against his chest. The contact was electric. Luna's body, starved of touch for 15 years, betrayed her. A jolt, hot and sharp, shot through her. Her wolf, so long dormant, rose up and purred. "No!" she screamed, shoving at his chest. "Luna, stop, you'll hurt yourself." He held her fast. He was impossibly strong, and so warm. She was pressed against him, her back to his front, his arms a cage of muscle around her. "Let me go!" she screamed, beating at his arms. "Let me go!" "I can't!" He growled, his voice thick, his face buried in her hair. "I can't, and I will not." He held her, letting her fight, letting her exhaust her rage and fear until her sobs quieted, and she was just a trembling, weeping woman in the arms of the king who had just inadvertently become her jailer. "I believe you," he whispered, his lips against her hair. She stilled. "What?" "I believe you," he repeated, his voice full of a sudden cold certainty. "The bond, it doesn't lie, and if you say he's a traitor, then he's a traitor." He turned her around, his hands on her shoulders. His eyes were no longer those of a man in turmoil. They were the eyes of a king. "He is in my capital. He is at my court. He has his claws in everything." Maddox looked not at her, but through her, his mind already spinning a dozen plans. "And you are the one person who can identify him. You're the only one who knows his face." Luna's blood ran cold. She finally understood. "You're not keeping me here for safety," she whispered, her eyes wide, with a new dawning horror. "I'm taking you to the capital." "To the palace," Maddox said, his voice grim. "You're not my mate, Luna. You're my weapon." The trip to the capital was a blur. Luna was put in a black, armored truck, a silent prisoner, sandwiched between Corbin and another massive warrior. She watched the Grizzly Pine wilderness, her home, her prison, her sanctuary disappear in the rearview mirror. The citadel was everything the forest was not. It was a fortified city of stone and metal, loud, crowded, and smelling of thousands of shifters. The palace within it was a fortress of cold glass and dark, imposing stone. Shifters in the halls stopped and bowed as Maddox passed their eyes, sliding to Luna with open suspicion. Maddox stopped at a large carved wooden door, pressing his hand to a scanner. "You will have your own rooms," he said, as the door hissed open. "You will have guards. You are not to leave this wing without me or Corbin." The rooms were a suite larger than her entire hollowed-out tree, with a fireplace and a wall of windows overlooking the snowy peaks. A gilded cage, Luna said her first words since the lodge. A necessary precaution. Maddox countered his face, a mask of stone. "You don't understand. Patron is the head of my internal security. He has eyes everywhere. If he knows you're here, if he knows who you are, he'll kill me," Luna finished. "This time he'll finish the job. He will not get the chance." Maddox's gaze was hard. He turned and left, and Luna heard the lock click loud and final. She was alone. She walked to the window. It was thick, reinforced glass. There was no escape. She spent 3 days in that cage. Lenora came and went, bringing food, changing the bandages on her leg, and offering a gentle motherly presence that Luna found deeply unsettling. Corbin stood outside her door like a statue. Of Maddox she saw nothing. Her leg was healing, but her mind was unraveling. She had gone from total isolation to total confinement. She was a prisoner. On the 3rd night, she couldn't take it anymore. Pacing the room, she found it a loose floorboard in the back of the closet, a relic of the old palace. She pried it up. Beneath it was a small, dark space, a service duct. "I am a ghost," she reminded herself. "Ghosts don't use doors." She squeezed into the duct. It was filthy dark and smelled of dust and spiders. It felt like home. She crawled for what felt like hours, following the sound of voices and the faint, invisible pull of the mate bond she had denied. She was driven by a desperate, clawing need to know. Was Maddox a liar? Was this all a trap? She emerged behind a tapestry in a dimly lit staff corridor, her silent gift masking her scent, and a lifetime of practice masking her sound. She followed the pull to Maddox's office. The door was ajar. He was inside, not alone. "Cannot be sure, Alpha," a calm, deep, reasonable voice was saying. "The evidence is thin, a few missing patrols. It could be any number of minor Alphas challenging your rule. Do not let paranoia create a monster where there is none." "It's him," Maddox insisted, his voice tired and raw. "Maddox, I have served your family for 50 years, the voice said, full of paternal patience. "Let me handle security. I will find who is feeding you this false information." Luna crept closer, peering through the crack. Maddox was at his desk, his head in his hands. Standing in front of the desk, his hand resting on Maddox's shoulder in a gesture of comfort, was a man. He was tall, with distinguished silver hair and a kind, handsome face. Luna's blood turned to ice. It was him. It was the face from her nightmares, the man who had smiled as her world burned. He hadn't aged a day. It was Patron. Patron was comforting the man whose family he had helped slaughter. He was the snake coiled around the heart of the conclave. Then Patrine's eyes for a split second flicked directly to the tapestry where Luna was hiding. He couldn't see her. He couldn't smell her. But he smiled. A slow, cold, knowing smile. The exact same smile she remembered from 15 years ago. He knows Luna thought her heart stopping. He doesn't know where I am, but he knows I'm in the palace. She scrambled backward into the duct, her breath coming in silent, panicked gasps. She fled back to her room, her mind racing. He wasn't just a traitor. He was playing with them. An hour later, Maddox came to her room. He looked exhausted. "I'm sorry," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "This is more complicated than I thought. Patron. It's hard to see him as a monster." "He is," Luna said, her voice a flat, dead tone. "I need more proof, Luna," he said, rubbing his face. "Your word is enough for me, but it's not enough for my counsel. If I accuse a man like Patron of treason without ironclad proof, I will be the one they see as the traitor. I could start a civil war." "So what do you want from me?" she asked. "There is a winter solstice ball tomorrow night," he said. "The entire conclave will be there, all the elders, all the alphas. Patron will be there. I want you to be there, by my side." "A ball," she scoffed. "You want me to dance? I want you to watch," he said, his eyes intense. "I want you to see who he talks to. He's been planning something. I can feel it. He's been looking for something. Something, an artifact, a treaty, something from the Silver Creek Pack. It's why he's been funding the poachers in the Grizzly Pine. He's been searching." A cold dread settled over her. "He was searching for me. And now I want to set a trap," Maddox said, his voice grim. "And you, my silent, unseen mate, you are the perfect bait." The ball was an assault. Luna had refused the dress. A compromise was reached. She stood hidden in an alcove, not in silk, but in armor of her own choosing. Black-fitted pants, knee-high boots, and a tunic of dark green velvet. Her hair, washed and tamed, fell in heavy waves down her back. She thought, like a porcelain doll dressed for a funeral, and tucked in her boot was the hilt of her Kershaw knife. Maddox was waiting at the bottom of the grand staircase. He was not a man. He was a king. He wore a formal black uniform with a high collar and a crimson cape draped over one shoulder. He looked like a god of war, and every eye in the room was on him. "You're late," he murmured as she descended her steps, silent. "I was considering the window again," she whispered back. He offered his arm. She ignored it and walked past him, forcing him to follow. He sighed and led the way into the ballroom. The room went silent. It wasn't a gradual hush. It was a vacuum. 1,000 shifters, alphas, betas, and their mates stopped talking, stopped drinking, and stared. Whispers were like snakes in the grass. "Who is she? A rogue. No scent. It's unnatural." Luna kept her chin high, her expression a mask of bored indifference. She focused on one thing, the man with the silver hair standing by the fireplace holding a glass of wine. Patron. He was watching her. He had not taken his eyes off her since she entered the room. His expression was one of polite curiosity, but his eyes were calculating. "He's the one," Maddox said, his voice a low rumble. "In the grey suit." "I know," Luna said. "Dance with me," Maddox ordered. "I don't know how. Just follow my lead, and do not under any circumstances look him in the eye." Maddox pulled her onto the dance floor. His hand on her back was a brand, his other hand engulfing hers. The music started a slow, mournful waltz. She was stiff as a board, stepping on his feet. "Relax," he muttered, pulling her closer, so close her face was buried in his chest. She could smell him, pine ozone, and pure, undiluted alpha. Her wolf, the traitor, whimpered in pleasure. "You're using this as an excuse," she accused, her voice muffled. "I am multitasking," he replied, his voice a low vibration she felt in her teeth. He spun her out again, and her eyes met Patron's across the room. He raised his glass to her, that same cold smile on his lips. Luna's blood froze. He knows. He didn't just suspect. He knew who she was. "Maddox," she said, her voice tight with panic. "The plan isn't working. He's not scared. He's not surprised. He knows." Maddox's head snapped to Patron. "What?" He recognized me. I'm sure of it. The poachers. Luna whispered the pieces slamming together with horrifying clarity. They weren't just in the grizzly pine. Patrin sent them. Maddox's face went white. He sent them to find you. He knew I survived, Luna said, her mind racing. He's been hunting me for 15 years, and you just delivered me. No. Maddox growled, his mind catching up. He was hunting for the soulless stone. It's a land treaty, a relic. It's what gives the Alpha King dominion over the wilderness. Without it, the lands go to the oldest living bloodline of the original pack. Luna finished quoting the law she'd heard her father recite 100 times. Maddox stared at her. You, the lands, the grizzly pine. It's all yours. Patrin hadn't just been cleaning up a loose end. He had been staging a coup 15 years in the making. By killing her, he would erase the true heir. And now the true heir was standing in the middle of his ballroom, dancing with the king. This ball isn't a party, Luna said, her voice hollow. It's an execution. It's my execution. Not on my watch, Maddox snarled. His power exploded outward, a silent command. His Crimson Peak warriors straightened, but Patrin was already moving. He walked to the massive fireplace. He reached up, pushed a stone, and a section of the wall slid open. The stone! Patrin said, his voice magically amplified, booming through the hall. The music stopped. It was never about the girl. It was about this. He held up a small, dark object. The Solace Stone, he announced. The original treaty of the first packs. The one that states that the Alpha King's rule is conditional. Patron, what is the meaning of this treason? Maddox roared, stalking forward. The meaning, boy, Patrin spat the mask of the kind elder gone, is that your father's rule was a lie, and yours is an abomination. He took this land by force, by slaughtering the Silver Creek pack. That was you, Luna screamed. The Iron Fangs, you led them. The Iron Fangs were a tool, Patrin laughed. Your father helped. He wanted the land, I wanted the power. We had a deal, but he betrayed me. I've been searching for it for 15 years. And now that you have it, Maddox said, his hands clenched. And now that I have it, Patrin said, I claim my birthright. His warriors, a dozen men who had been pretending to be part of the court, drew their silver weapons. And as for the last pathetic whelp of the Silver Creek pack, Patrin said, his cold eyes landing on Luna. You served your purpose. You led the king to me. And now, you get to die with him. He crushed the soulless stone in his hand. It wasn't a stone. It was a trigger. The massive chandeliers, each weighing over a ton, tore free from the ceiling. They felt chains and crystal and steel aimed directly at the center of the dance floor, aimed directly at Maddox and Luna. There was no time to think, only instinct. Maddox roared and shoved Luna, throwing her with all his strength. She skidded across the polished floor, clear of the path. He was too late to save himself. The first chandelier, a ton of crystal and iron, crashed down. He wasn't crushed, but the weight pinned his leg, driving iron spikes deep into his shoulder. He roared, a sound of agony and rage. The ballroom exploded into chaos. Shifters screamed. Patrin's men, revealing themselves, drew silver-laced blades. "Kill the king!" Patrin bellowed. "And bring me the girl!" Luna scrambled to her feet. Her first instinct, the one that had kept her alive for 15 years, screamed, "Run! Hide! Vanish!" She looked at Maddox, pinned and bleeding. He met her gaze, his golden alpha eyes full of pain. "Luna!" he gasped. "Run!" Patrin laughed from across the room. "Yes, run, little ghost. Run back to your tree. It's all you know how to do." Something inside Luna snapped. The grief, the fear, The 15 years of cold and loneliness. It all coalesced not into terror, but into a white-hot, clarifying rage. He was right. She had been running. Not anymore. My name, she said, her voice quiet but carrying in the sudden lull, is Luna of the Silver Creek Pack. She pulled the Kershaw knife from her boot. My father was Beta. My mother was a healer. My brother was Jonah. And you are the man who took them from me. And I will take you too, Patrine snarled, drawing his own blade. You are nothing, a scentless, broken omega. You don't even have a wolf. Don't I? Luna whispered. She closed her eyes. She reached inside, not for the girl, but for the beast, the wolf she had kept caged for 15 years. She didn't just let it out. She unleashed it. The shift was not graceful. It was a violent explosion of pent-up power. Her bones broke and reset. Her skin tore, replaced by thick, silver-grey fur. But it was her scent that was the real weapon. For 15 years she had been a silent wolf, masking her presence. Now she pushed. She didn't just release her scent, she detonated it. It was the scent of a 100-year-old forest, of cold streams of rage, and of a bloodline that was supposed to be dead. It was the scent of a true-born alpha. Patrin stumbled back, his eyes wide with shock. No, that's impossible. You're an alpha Luna in her full wolf form, leaner than Maddox built for speed and silence, with her same wild green-gold eyes let out a howl. It was not a cry of pain. It was a declaration of war. Corbin and the Crimson Peak warriors who had been fighting to get to Maddox heard it. It was a new frequency, a new alpha, and it sang to them. An alpha! Corbin roared, breaking through the line. A new alpha! The tide turned. It was no longer a coup. It was a war. Luna didn't wait. She shot across the floor, a silver blur. She was not a brawler like the big alphas. She was a killer. She used her silent ability as a weapon, a ghost in the chaos. They couldn't track her. She was there then, gone, a dervish of claws and teeth. She hamstrung one traitor, tore the throat out of another, clearing a path to Maddox. He was still pinned. Get him, he grunted, nodding at Patrin, who was now engaged in a full-blown battle with Corbin. Luna pressed her wolf's head to his, a cold nose on his bloody cheek, a promise. Then she turned and leaped onto the wreckage of the chandelier. She used it as a launching pad, sailing over the heads of the brawling wolves, and landed directly on Patrin's back. She sank her teeth deep into his shoulder. This is for my father. He roared, shocked by her audacity, and slammed her against a pillar. She held on her claws, digging deep. This is for my mother. He grabbed her, his own claws, raking her side, and threw her to the floor. She landed hard, the wind knocked out of her. He raised his saber, the silver glinting, ready for the killing blow. This is for Jonah. You. He panted, his human form half buckled his face, a mask of blood and hatred, should have stayed in the woods. And you, a voice growled from behind him, should have stayed loyal. Maddox, free of the wreckage, his leg dragging his black uniform, shredded and soaked in blood, ploughed into Patrine like a freight train. He was in his half-shifted form, a terrifying hybrid of man and beast, all claws and fangs and raw, kingly power. He was the Alpha King, and this was his throne room. He was judge, jury, and now executioner. The fight was not long. It was brutal. It was a clash of two massive alphas, but one was fueled by greed, and the other by a righteous tectonic fury. Maddox was a force of nature. Finally, Patrin was on the ground, disarmed, beaten his wolf, whimpering. The room fell silent. The fighting stopped. Maddox stood over Patrin, his chest heaving, his claws dripping. "Any last words, traitor?" Maddox spat. Patrin looked past him at Luna, who had slowly limped to Maddox's side. "He'll never trust you." Patrin coughed, blood staining his lips. "The silent wolf, the hidden alpha. He'll see you as a threat, just like his father did." Maddox froze. "The Red Knight?" Patrin sneered, his voice a broken rasp. "It wasn't my idea, it was his father's. I was just the tool." Luna's blood ran cold. She looked at Maddox. His face, already pale from blood loss, went ashen. "He's lying," Maddox said, his voice shaking. "Am I?" Patrin smiled, his bloody broken smile. He feared the Silver Creek pack. He feared her bloodline. He wanted them erased. And I was happy to oblige. Maddox let out a sound of pure, soul-shattering anguish. He hadn't just inherited a kingdom. He had inherited a genocide. He raised his claw, ready to end it, to kill Patrin in pure rage. "No." Luna's voice, her human voice, clear and sharp. She had shifted back. She was naked, bloody, and bruised, but she was standing tall. "Don't," she said. "Not like this. Not in rage." She walked forward, ignoring the stairs, and picked up Patrin's fallen saber. She held it not as a warrior, but as a judge. "Patrin of the Iron Fangs," she said, her voice ringing with an authority she didn't know she possessed. "For the murder of the Silver Creek pack, for the betrayal of the Conclave, and for treason against the king, I, Luna Alpha of Silver Creek, sentence you to death." She handed the saber to Maddox. "Be the king, Maddox," she whispered. "Not the man. Be the justice." Maddox looked at the sword at her, at the man who had destroyed both their lives. He finally saw her. Not as a weapon, not as a victim, as his equal. He took the saber. He turned to Patrin. He didn't say a word. He swung the sword. Justice was done. Maddox dropped the blade, which clattered on the marble floor. He looked at Luna, his queen. Then he collapsed. The blood loss, the shock, the weight of his father's sins, it was too much. Luna caught him. She, who was half his size, held him up, her strength belying her frame. "It's okay," she whispered, her arms around him, holding him as he had held her at the lodge. "It's okay. We're not our fathers. We're not our past." She looked up at the stunned, silent court. At Corbin, at Lenora, who was rushing forward at the 100 wide-eyed shifters. "Get your king a healer!" she roared, her alpha voice echoing in the hall. "Now!" And for the first time in 15 years, Luna was not a ghost. She was not hiding. She was home. The story of the silent wolf and the Alpha King has just begun. Luna and Maddox have defeated a traitor, but the shadows of the past are long. Can a king who inherited a bloody crown and a woman who survived its cruelty truly build a new world? Or are there other, older enemies waiting in the wings, drawn by the scent of a new, powerful alpha? If you need to know what happens next, let me know in the comments. This was She Hid in the Woods. And if you enjoyed this story, please show your support. Hit that like button, share this video with a friend who loves werewolf romance, and subscribe to the channel for more original stories every week. Your support helps me create more content just for you. Thanks for listening.